Right. Kia ora, everyone. Welcome back to another edition and a quick analysis with Mr. Shailesh, our political observer. And thank you, Shailesh, for taking out the time today to discuss another key political party just before we are having the elections kicking off in full swing from tomorrow. So today we are discussing another major party, which is a major competitor to the current party, the National Party. And I would like to start, Shailesh, by asking, I know it's quite a fresh thing off the block about the 100-day plan, which the National has announced today. And as I was going through, there are multiple points they have mentioned. So quickly for our readers or for our listeners as well, what would your key points from that 100-day plan be?
Kia ora, everyone, and thank you very much, Sheerali, for this lovely introduction and invitation for this analysis that we are going to do. Being an election year is very critical for all the listeners to understand. We covered some of the current left party policies in the last episode, and this time we will be doing an analysis of the major opposition, as you said, National Party, which is bent on getting back NZ on track, which is their slogan,
Yep.
and which is something that we will be dwell on. But you touched on, yes, there is just today, I think they have declared the 100-day plan, and I think we can jump into that. But one thing before I start doing those analysis and talking about the policies that you may resonate, you may not resonate, but one thing is sure, please cast your vote. Don't put off by the policies,
Yep.
because exercising your vote has as much lots to do with the policies, but exercising your vote is your personal right and entitlement, which you should exercise. So that's first thing I wanted to tell to all the listeners and viewers, Sheerali.
Yep.
Then we can get into the 100-day plan which National has announced today, and how does it compares, and what really it means to the listeners, does it mean to the viewers, and is it really achievable, not achievable? That's altogether different, but this is the promise that every political party makes, and the promise is completely based on trust. And the trust is something that we take along, and we believe in that, and we then think that this is what we are going to expect out of this government who is going to govern us. So having said that, let's jump on the policies that we want to discuss, or the 100-day plan.
Yeah.
And for that, I'll just share my screen. Give me a sec, Sheerali.
Sure, sure.
Just see. Let me just share this. Okay. There you go. So we are just directly talking from their website, basically.
Yep.
And yeah, so Nationals plan to get our country back on track. So that's their slogan. They want to get back New Zealand because they feel that New Zealand is not really on track since COVID or before COVID, their views, their thoughts. So they have pledged some 8 pledge programs, policies, but we will dwell into that. Rather than that, let's do the 100 plan program, 100-day action plan. Is that the
Yeah,
one?
but that's the fresh one. And
Hmm.
I'm really curious to know, at the last moment, them announcing a 100-day action plan. I could see some good points into it, but I just
Sure.
want to know, what's in it for me as a common person.
Right. Sure. Sure. Right. So you can go ahead and ask me, Sheerali, but I've gone through a little bit of it, and certain things definitely matters. Most of the things
Mhm.
matters because that's what matters to them. That means they are thinking on behalf of all the people, and every political party always talks on behalf of the people rather than their own. That's what my main I mean, preconception is that way, and it should be that way. But if it is not, and if just it is just a scoring point from one political to another political party, then that really doesn't benefit the overall people. But it just scores the point from one party to another, that who is better than me and I am
Yep.
better. So that's another point which all the listeners should be understanding. Is it, as you rightly said, what's in it for me in terms of this 100-day plan? How does it affect me? And how can it affect me? And what really matters to me at this point of time when we are in crisis, which is the cost of living crisis, which is the banking industry sector issues, but also day-to-day expenses of buying your groceries and day-to-day food.
Yep.
That's one of the, and then the fuel, which is to travel to work and travel to everywhere, and mobility of a person, which also gives mental health and mental, it affects lots of things. If you are at home doing nothing or not going out, then obviously, but then to go out, you have to spend these petrol prices. Is it worth? And how much you have? That's another question comes along. So let's talk about this 100 action plan, what matters to you and how it affects going to affect you. So we can go one by one, or we can just pick few.
So I
Sheerali.
think we will, because as I was going through, because they have mentioned they'll be introducing legislation. So they are like, pretty much serious about making
Sure.
laws and rules about these points, which, as you said, the fuel tax thing is quite important for a common person like me. So,
Yes.
which
Yes.
is going to remove that 11.5 cents per petrol. So that's something which is quite interesting. I
Mm,
think one thing which I would like you to tell me about
mm,
is point number 3, which they're talking about restoring 90-day employment trial period for all businesses.
mm.
Now, this I do remember was quite
Yeah.
not controversial, but it was a lot spoken about the benefits of removing it, and they're talking about restoring it. So, what's your point or analysis on that? Do you think that's a good thing, bad thing?
No, you are right, absolutely right. Looking at the situation currently that we are into, unemployment and employment, when we talk about inflation, when we talk about unemployment, when we talk about economy, this really matters most, because your economy is driven by every person who is working and contributing towards, whether by way of self-employment, whether by way of employee, or whether by way of business, whatever, it does affect basically. And 90-day employment trial periods was once introduced by the same political party, thinking that giving the control to the employers would solve lots of problems of what you call it, legal mitigation, employment regulations, and all of that could be all handled by the employers, giving them control and authority, so that less governance from the government, which will have less problems of employer-employee trust and relations. That's what they thought. But really speaking, we saw lots of unemployment as well happening, but also lots of unhappy employees. And then employees were either taking people, they thought that they are taking advantage of the employers, or
Mm-hmm.
the employers thought that we are easy to take advantage of the employee. So there was a conception and misconception of who is taking advantage of who. But the question remains, if they are in employment for 90 days, and if there is a probation period, which normally it is there anyway as per the employment regulation, there is a 6-month probation, which gives you that much time for to understand the employee's skills, talent, training, untrained, trained, liking, unliking, all of those things can be sussed out into the 6 months period, which 6 months probation. But cutting down to 90-day employment trial periods gives the employer the upper hand to get the project work done, get it done, and then say, we don't have any employment now for you. Because there are lots of, in business, there are lots of projects, and everything is considered as a project rather than employer-employee nowadays. So that's the problem with the modern day situation. People don't want to be staying in one company for 10 years, 5 years, 2 years. They just want to get the work done and then they say goodbye, because there are lots of things involved in it. Once you employ a person for 6 months or 1 year or 2 years, then you got to give the holiday pay, which then you have to give all the
Yep.
sick leaves and all of those benefits that they think is a waste, or they think it's too much costing for the business. So they end up doing contracts. So employees,
Mm.
this 90-day turns into not an employer-employee employment, but it turns into not a fixed term or a casual employment, but it turns into like a very temporary based project-based employer-employee relationship. So to me, it's a little bit of good and bad in both, but then the danger side is much higher
Yep.
than the side, because employees get unemployed quite fast, quite quick, and
Mm.
they don't know after 90 days whether somebody will give them employment. And that's the biggest worry that we have with this 90-day. So I think coming back to this 90-day or restoring back, when we have already seen after removing that, nothing really has happened in terms of unemployment rates.
Mm.
The unemployment, in fact, has gone very much, very well compared to the last time, in spite of COVID, in spite of lots of challenges that the country faced, and in spite of minimum wage going up, unemployment also has been reduced to a low as at 3.5, 3.4, something like that it is, which is at the lowest when it comes to the compared to the OECD and other countries comparing. So
Yep.
I think, and there is no 90-day, and we have been now living with this without 90 days for almost more than 6 years, 6 years almost like. So I feel that that's not for good for businesses, because businesses doesn't get stability of people who can
Mm.
work for them, and the employees doesn't get stability of their next employment. And so it's a catch 22, and it's really
Yep.
always stressful situation for both, not just
Yep.
employee, for both employers and employee. Particularly small businesses, they rely on project, or they want to complete certain tasks, and same as big companies want to complete certain tasks. So it's okay when you have, but you can always hire for those skilled contract based employees. There nothing
Yep.
stopping you from unnecessarily putting this 90-day. Will paint the brush for every single employee, whether you want as a casual, whether you want as a contract, whether you want as a fixed term. It doesn't matter for any employee. The color, the brush has been painted to all this, like one size fits all. It's like that kind of situation, which is not a good thing, because if suppose one employee wants a permanent employee or a long-term employment, now he won't get it in that company in spite of he likes it, in spite of he's skilled, because there is a trial period of 90 days and he's got a sword on his neck that he will be removed anytime after the project is finished. So there is that loyalty and acceptance of employer employee is not there. I mean, that's missing in that. I personally feel it's a little bit of uncertainty, more uncertainty and more dangerous for business and the employee. So that I don't quite agree with that restoring, because
Yep.
it has worked for 6 years. Why it won't work for another 10 years? It also worked before 90-day was brought. It also
Yep.
worked. So nothing really major should have. It is just giving employers the upper hand or control. We see what happened with the recent debacle of immigration, when employers were given the power to employ
Yep.
immigrants. And we saw that accredited assisted visa, when you give control, what happens and
Yep.
how they misuse or how they abuse,
Yep.
basically. I don't say
Uh,
all words, but this is what I feel.
yeah. I guess we'll have to just see how it plays out in case National does come into power. Some
Yeah.
of the other important points, which like they are quite self-explanatory about
Mm,
extending the free breast screening for women aged up to 74,
mm,
banning the gang patches, giving police a greater power,
mm.
and extending the remand prisoners for rehab programs and stuff. I think those things are something, youth offending, taking a
Yeah.
serious approach to that.
Yeah.
Those are quite important ones, which I personally do agree with. My one point, which I would like your brief analysis, is about point number two about removing the Reserve Bank's dual mandate. to
Mm.
get the bank focused on putting the lid back on inflation, as mentioned. So I think that's one burning issue which we are having. So what's your take on that?
Remove the Reserve Bank's dual mandate to get the bank focused on putting the lid back on inflation. Now, this is a very, very, very complicated and dicey kind of situation because any political party has tried to work with Reserve Bank. They
Hmm.
always get bogged down. They always get axed by the international monetary policies. And
Yes.
this
Yeah.
is a very dangerous area. Political parties can give slogans, can say and promise based on what they think is happening today. But if you have looked in the past 6 years, and particularly after COVID, particularly when the inflation was very much this, but the bank interest and everything was so low that everything got out of hands at that time. And everybody like was okay because during COVID, nobody had money. So the banks were very generous, or we can say, but they didn't know what was coming up. By lowering this, everybody got become a victim of that lowering, because
Mm.
most of the people got sucked into buying and investing their hard-earned money into properties and into businesses at that time because there was a low interest rate. They didn't knew the interest rate would go so up that now they just can't afford. They just have to sell those invested properties, or mortgages were too high. So when they say that they are going to bring back or get the dual mandate and negotiate with the Reserve Bank, it's really dicey again, because this inflation, as Reserve Bank themselves said, they created this inflation on purpose.
Mm.
So when you have on one side a bank itself saying, Reserve Bank, that we have created, what the political party is saying that we will back or will lead back on inflation is really, really very, 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 very complicated to me. To me, it's not unreal. To me, it's unrealistic. It's not real, to be honest. If you ask my 2 cents of banking, finance, and in the business advisory services that I have been into, I think this is very much like wishful thinking, that they
Mm.
put lid back on the inflation. Because if spending, they are at the moment they are claiming that there is a lot of spending from the current government. So I'm not criticizing about what they are saying. I'm just saying that if they don't agree with the spending and the inflation, then what are they going to do extra? They need to be more specific and clear about how they can solve this inflation, or how they can put this lid back on inflation. Because just making a statement will not solve the problem, according to me. It's
Yep.
very, very complicated and a very, very dangerous area, because of international monetary policies guidelines, they have to work through that. They haven't got their own guidelines. No country today has got their own guidelines.
Yep.
They have to follow them. So, which means they will have to follow and work around with the international monetary policy rather than the Reserve Bank's New Zealand Reserve
Yep.
Bank. New Zealand Reserve Bank follows the guidelines of the international monetary. So it's a hand in hand. So
Hand in
political
hand.
party don't dictate. Political parties cannot dictate unless they change the legislation, form their own international monetary policy. Then I would love to see those things reformatively happening in our country, particularly. And we can show that, being even the smallest economy, we can still show that we can do this kind of initiatives by having our own policy, because to handle our own inflation rather than, you know, mirroring with other inflation countries.
True.
So that's
True.
what I would say, Shirali. I don't know whether that will answer the question to the what I wanted to say, but to all the listeners, this is just I personally feel, in my view, that it's going to be like a wishful thinking to say that it's like a slogan that I will get back and get on track, or Labor's policy, I will say I'm in it for you. They can do these slogans, or I can put lid back on inflation. But then how is the main thing? How they can implement this to affect you is what we want to know. All the people who are on mortgages, who are on bank loans, business loans,
Mm.
they are affected by this inflation, and even normal individuals are affected by inflation. So, but they are more who are in mortgage situation, who are in
True.
borrowing situation, and for them, they need some really real answers from the government. That's what I would
Yep.
say.
I think this 100-day plan has, more so covered like their economic strategy, their infra innovation, the law and order, education, healthcare. I think
Mm.
that's the reason they had. I believe they would have launched this just to give people an overview of their different policies or their pledge card and stuff, which they were like,
Yep.
promoting it. So I just wanted to ask you maybe a couple of questions quickly about the infrastructure thing.
Mm.
And because we have been seeing that, New Zealand is being laid back, maybe due to COVID and labor shortages. Our infrastructure is not as it should be as a developed country,
Mm.
especially around Auckland. So, what do you think are some of the key infrastructure investments and innovation initiatives that the National Party plans to undertake to support the economic growth? And you know, taking into consideration the technological aspect as well. So, what do you think? Some key points over there are.
Yeah, to me, infrastructure, what every political party has been focusing on is one is the climate change to handle and tackle the climate change. So we need a strong infrastructure policies to
Mm-hmm.
roll around that, which at one point National was saying that we don't think couple of I mean they one of the don't quote me on that, but one of them MPs said, and that was then take down that saying that climate change was not real. Climate change is a created one, or climate change is real or created. And there's a debate on that, but let's
Yeah.
not worry about that. But the main thing is the reality is we witnessed in 2023, climate change is real because floods can happen, thunderstorms
Yes.
can happen anytime, and then it damages everything around.
Mm.
Particularly when it happened in Auckland this time, we
Yeah.
definitely felt there is a lot of lack of infrastructure that was not
Mm.
invested to handle this, to tackle this. So that's one aspect of infrastructure investments that they need to do. And that includes that correlates with the transportation, with the roads, with the infrastructure for the rail line, for transporting on the rails and on the goods, and also airlines and all sorts of those things that come into picture, land, air, and everything, water, all transports through water, through land, through air, everything they need to be properly. But then we also saw lots of regional infrastructure where the roads were not good enough, which means there is a less movement of people from one area to another. Again, giving concentration of people onto one area only, that also suffers a lot because there is no infrastructure investment in all the regions. So that means we need infrastructure in the regions as
Yeah.
well. We need infrastructure in the local cities and towns, top cities and towns as well, to if we consider ourselves to be one of the world's first world nation, we definitely need a top-notch infrastructure. I think, to me, if you ask me, that there is a lack of infrastructure investment, not just by one government, by consecutive governments.
Yep.
And that has happened to this our country, that we are finding the need of the hour, and too much money needs to be spent at one time when we had faced natural calamities of climate change. We have faced, the COVID situation, and that's where we realize that there is a lot of infrastructure needed, particularly in the health sector, education sector, in the environmental sector. If you
Yep.
look, there is a lot of lack of infrastructure investments has been done. We need hospitals to handle COVID. We need education centers to, to make sure that our kids at all times are really able to, study and still do whatever they had to do, even at the baddest times or even at the natural calamities times. So we need all those investments in those areas, but particularly,
Yep.
school, regions, health. So
Yep.
hospitals, we need new hospitals, many. We can't just depend on the current infrastructure that we have. And we saw that we cannot handle it. But there were other ways of handling which really worked in our favor. Doesn't mean that it will work every time in our favor. We have
True.
to
True.
we have to be very well equipped with that.
Yeah. I think I can see in the national's policy for the infrastructure, they have outlined a 30-year infrastructure pipeline to deliver long-term certainty, and they're going to set up some national infrastructure agency to
Mm,
coordinate the government funding and connect the domestic and offshore investments. So they do have some concrete
mm.
steps over there, it looks like. But yeah, as we will have to see as it plays out. One final comment from you, Shailesh. Like I know, like what do you think their policies are fitting into the broader vision for the country? Any last comments you would like to give about any other key sector like education, healthcare, otherwise?
Um, I personally feel that they do kind of complement with Labour's policies when it comes to lots of infrastructure investments, particularly related to what matters to the people, which is the education, the health, and the housing. And that's where everybody agrees that these are the key factors: housing, education, health. These are the
Yeah,
key. I personally feel that as long as national, you know, I mean, people perceive national as one of the only working for the rich, only working for the business class, only working for the top
mm,
level of
mm,
people. That's what they have been perceived, and which they have also shown that with their policies as well, to a large extent, where there was lack of infrastructure or lack of investments or lack of tax cutting was there in the previous years with them, whether cutting in the health, cutting in the education and all. But I think this time they do have to continue with the social economic policies rather than just being a capitalist or
yeah,
being just taking the government to the high level or country to the high level where comparable with Australia or America, because we should never be comparing with them, to be honest. Yes, we can look
mm,
around them and say that we want to be like that, but doesn't mean we can be, because our infrastructure, our dynamics are totally different to them. As long as we become first world nation by giving the top notch housing, top notch education, top notch health, and this country becomes a desirable place for everyone to come and actually witness that rather than just compare that. I think there is a difference between comparing and witnessing the
yeah,
reality. And I would like to see this government, any government who comes in, and particularly national, who has shown some lot of social welfare policies that they want to invest. They are not
mm,
denying what Labour is saying. We want to invest in education, health, and housing. They are not denying that at all, which means they are agreeing to a lot of social economic policies that they also want to bring, but they have got a different way of doing it. And I guess that's what the voters and that's what the listeners have to see, whether it resonates with them or whether it is a realistic view of them, or is it just they are just giving these statements. Because saying statement is okay. I can
yeah,
say I can do this and I can do that. But this is how I think is very important. Because I think one of the thing credibility of that this nationals is in the media, as you can see, people are asking only about one thing, that whether their plan is realistic. They say 100-day action plan, but one action plan is their tax cuts. Whether that is realistic,
yeah,
because it can happen, because it's not a problem. People are not losing the credibility on the money that they are going to banking on to be received through the foreign. See, they are restoring this 90-day. They want to also restore the foreign bank policy, foreign buyers policy. They want to restore that as well. But by saying that they want to allow foreign buyers to buy property and then get the revenue for the country by taxing them.
yeah.
Now, whether that is a realistic view, that's an action plan which is going to be worked or not, is a big question. And that's what we need to just be mindful, that yes, tax cuts everybody wants, not necessarily from the tax cuts that they are expecting the money from. They can find another ways of giving that tax cuts rather than depending on unrealistic money that is not going to come in, or that is very much dependence on that imagination, or that wishful thinking of people will come and buy and I will tax them and then I will get this money, is $1 million question. So I personally feel that in my last comment, I would like to say that national policies are leaning towards the social economic in this election, which I can see that they want to do.
Mm-hmm.
But I can also see the other side of the coin is like they are not completely being honest with the people, whether where they will cut, whether they will cut health, education to fund this tax cut, because there is not money much left in the
Mm,
kitty after the COVID.
true.
And so that's a challenge that this government has to come up and become being a people working for all people, not for business people. That's the challenge they will have to show, that we are not here only for business. This time we are here for everyone.
Everyone.
For that, whatever it takes, we will do it. So that's what it needs to be seen. Yeah. So because that's a because they said they want to get back NZ on track. And when they say NZ back on track, that means for all, right? It's not for
Yep.
just one class or
Just
one.
for a group.
Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. As a parent, like I feel quite happy to see some of the things they have mentioned, like banning the cell phones from the school and
Yeah.
putting more focus on maths and science. And as an immigrant, I'm quite pleased to see that they have plans to introduce something called as parent visa and opening up a medical school in Waikato. So some good points over there, which will
Hmm.
take New Zealand forward and back on track, as they say. But
Yeah.
it's a wait and watch approach for. So this month's going to be pretty crucial.
Yeah,
Yep.
the problem with that, Shirali, is I mean, I don't want to dwell more too much on that, but their policies are good. But at the moment, what is the need of the hour and what are the
Yep.
needs, what are the wants? That's what they need to focus. I
Yep.
mean,
The prioritization needs to be done.
yeah, because the banning phone is a great idea, which also we have been saying for a
Yeah.
long time. But then also, I mean, as the national themselves say that, we need to give the control. We need to give the control to the parents, to the employers, to also be responsible. So then when you look at
Mm.
that, then it's not just the schools, it's not just the education
Yep.
sector, the parents as well, that they have to take the responsibility of teaching their kids that, hey, don't take the phone, irrespective of whether school allows or not. But then also, the school's equally responsible that you can't use it during this time or during that time.
Yep.
It's all those things. And
Absolutely.
I think what Labor was saying, which from my memory, that they said that we don't have to force this policy because the policy is already, even if it's not there, it is a responsibility of the school that they have to make sure that the phones are not allowed while learning and while teaching and all of that. So that still policy exists, that moral responsibility exists. What national is doing is, which is just confirming that this policy is there, and if you don't behave, then this is the consequences, which is
Yep.
also in a way putting a good thing on that. So one layer after another layer, that's all there, more confirmation. So yeah, but yeah,
Well, thank you.
yeah, that's it. So
All right. I think it's just it's some good points as usual. Like it's a balance between like what do we say, the good and the bad and the worst, but we just have to wait and watch and see, like not everybody will be pleased is what I want to say in the end.
of
So
course, of
for
course.
any of the parties, not just for the national party, any of the parties, you can't please 100% of the people.
Yeah.
But I think yeah, it was a good discussion. Thank you, Shailesh, for your time. And to our listeners, we will meet again. We'll be back again with an analysis of the other parties. And we'll see you soon. Thank you.
Yes. Yeah. Thanks very much, Shirali, for giving me this opportunity once again to talk about the national policies and the 100-day program that recently announced, which is good to see that the political parties are committing to certain things before the election and not after the election, which is also good. But then the voters, I would like to say that, okay, take this opportunity of understanding deeperly every single policy as we analyze, and we try to give our best suggestions in that regard. But I think your individual responsibility is also there to actually go into deeper and
Yep.
understand what matters to you. As Shirali, you said you like some of the policies, which is great, and which will happen to many people. They can like certain things, they can dislike certain things, but at the end of the day, whatever it is, you need to please vote to make
Yep.
sure that we make
Absolutely.
a difference. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yes.
Thank you, Shailesh. Thank you very much.
No, thank you so much once again, and we will talk soon. Bye for now.